David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
So I woke up this morning, I had planned my morning, and we really planned the entire production day around watching as much of the Robert Mueller testimony before Congress as possible so that we could talk about it today, which I'm going to do right now rather than on tomorrow's show. And I thought as I got on my computer at 8:25 a.m. this morning to pull up the stream, I should see if Donald Trump has been tweeting because he's been panicking for days. Yesterday, we covered Donald Trump saying that Robert Mueller shouldn't even be allowed to testify. I should look at whether Donald Trump has sent any tweets. I pull up Donald Trump's Twitter account, and he sent 10 tweets in the hours and even minutes before Robert Mueller's testimony, starting last night, winding up even more this morning. This is a guy who's panicked. This is the president. It's important not to lose our sense of scope. This is the president devolving into a childish nincompoop. And I use the term nincompoop by its dictionary definition, not as an ad hominem, because of congressional testimony by a former special prosecutor. And you know what? Unfortunately, in a sense, fortunately for Trump, Mueller's testimony, at least the first several hours that have taken place as of right now, have not been particularly damaging to Donald Trump. But we'll get to that. Let's look at Donald Trump's tweets to begin with, starting last night. Quote, "So Robert Mueller has now asked for his longtime never-Trumper lawyer to sit beside him and help with answers. What's this all about? His lawyer represented the basement server guy who got off free in the crooked Hillary case. This should not be allowed. Rigged witch hunt." Continuing, "So Democrats and others can illegally fabricate a crime, try pinning it on a very innocent president, and when he fights back against this illegal and treasonous attack on our country, they call it obstruction? Wrong. Why didn't Robert Mueller investigate the investigators?" Continuing, quote, "It was never agreed that Robert Mueller could use one of his many Democrat never-Trumper lawyers to sit next to him and help him with his answers. This was specifically not agreed to, and I would never have agreed to it." Of course, it's not up to Trump. "The greatest witch hunt in U.S. history by far. Why didn't Robert Mueller and his band of 18 angry Democrats spend any time investigating crooked Hillary Clinton, lying and leaking James Comey, Lisa Page, and her psycho lover Peter S., Andy McCabe, the beautiful Orr family, Fusion GPS, and many more, including himself and Andrew W." This is the president tweeting, okay? Continuing. "So why didn't the highly conflicted Robert Mueller investigate how and why crooked Hillary Clinton deleted and acid washed 33,000 emails immediately after getting a subpoena from the United States Congress? She must have great lawyers. No collusion, no obstruction. Keep America great." Continuing, this is still Trump on Twitter this morning. "It has been reported that Robert Mueller is saying that he did not apply and interview for the job of FBI director and get turned down the day before he was wrongfully appointed special counsel. Good luck even following this stuff. Hope he doesn't say that under oath, in that we have numerous witnesses to the interview, including the Vice President of the United States." Donald Trump melting down in a completely unprecedented way, which says a lot when we're talking about Donald Trump, who has melted down on Twitter many times before. But then in the end, and again, maybe something will change in the later hours of the testimony that's still going on as we're filming today, the first many hours have not been particularly damaging to Trump, although there were many damaging things said or confirmed by Robert Mueller. And Mueller is looking confused and not really with it, I have to say. What I was looking for going into the hearings today included, do Republicans go after Mueller personally, despite him having credentials that should appeal to the right? I mean, we're talking about military, a lifelong Republican, a life of public service. Do they try to assail his character? And they did to some degree. What new information comes out? And hint, the answer is none. Robert Mueller stating in his opening statement, listen, we've charged 30 defendants. We've had 7 convictions or guilty pleas. But basically, the report is my statement, and I will be limiting myself to what is in the report, pointing out, importantly, his report nor his investigation addressed collusion. They looked at conspiracy, but collusion is not something on which they reached a conclusion because he didn't look at that, period. And that's an important thing. But Mueller, by and large, looking confused, unable to hear questions persistently, I mean, regularly. And I don't think it's a strategy of trying to kill time by asking for almost every question to be repeated. Mueller asking people about who even some of the players in this thing were. At one point, I believe it was David Cicilline from Rhode Island asked about Corey Lewandowski, a very specific question, and Mueller said, can you just remind me who Corey Lewandowski even is? So I don't believe that this was strategy by Mueller. He genuinely seemed to be having trouble hearing, having trouble recalling people's names and their role in the investigation. To some degree, I guess, to be expected, because you're dealing with hundreds and even thousands of names here, but regularly saying, I'm going to pass on that one. That's outside my purview, clamming up. But what's in the report is what I believe. Even sometimes saying he can't comment on something, being reminded by a member of Congress that it's in the report, and then saying, oh, well, in that case, my comment is what is in the report. I don't know that this was particularly successful for Democrats beyond one very specific series of questions towards the beginning, where Mueller answering with his very short yes, no's, it's in the report, it's out of my purview, did confirm the obstructive nature of Donald Trump's actions during the investigation, including that the motivation, to the extent that the investigation came to a conclusion on this, that Trump's motivation for his actions in attempting to obstruct were specifically meant to interfere with the investigation. So overall, I'll go right back to watching this after we're done filming today, and we'll have sort of a broader analysis tomorrow of the impact. It is not seeming to me that this testimony is going to be a game changer. And to that extent, for everybody who is waiting for something explosive to come out of it, as I said from the beginning, all we could really expect from these hearings, optimistically, was the proactive confirmation and publicizing of what was already in the report. Mueller made clear, the report is my statement. I will not go beyond it. There were lots of damaging things to Donald Trump confirmed, but in a way that, again, was sort of muddled, stumbling around in the dark, seemingly confused by Robert Mueller. Also, we learned that Louis Gohmert, Congressman Louis Gohmert, is completely off the rails and really shouldn't be a member of Congress. If you saw bits of that testimony, you'll probably know what I mean. We will have sort of a full summary tomorrow, but I don't know that it is necessarily going to move the needle. And that is what gets me to this next topic, which is really of utmost importance at this point in time. So we had the Mueller hearings today. In the Mueller hearings, we didn't get anything new about what Donald Trump did, actions by Trump and the people around him, but we did get some on-the-record confirmation from Robert Mueller about the obstructive goals and ambitions that Donald Trump had in his actions. Now, with regard to impeachment, after this is all said and done, after Robert Mueller is done testifying, which is still happening as of the taping of this segment, there will be people who say, now it's time for an impeachment inquiry. There will be some who will say, now it's time for the actual impeachment and removal of Donald Trump from the White House. There will be others who will say, let's not impeach. Let's not even do the inquiry. Question one is, what will Republicans think? The answer is actually, who cares? The important part is, what do Democrats think? And there is this growing problem of division within the Democratic Party on the topic of impeachment. There are those in the Democratic Party who are actually going so far as to say not only should Trump be impeached, but there is evidence for a conviction and removal on the basis of that impeachment based on what we know. There are those in the Democratic Party who say we should do an impeachment inquiry and let the inquiry take us to either impeaching or not impeaching, but let's start the inquiry right away. And then there are also Democrats who have publicly said we shouldn't get involved in this, either for political reasons or because they don't think that the evidence we've seen so far justifies an impeachment inquiry. There is a movement within the Democratic Party to do nothing when it comes to impeachment or an impeachment inquiry. The bottom line is that it's time for Democrats to cut the crap. And what I mean by that is that if the infighting about impeachment, if the debate within the Democratic Party about whether to even have an impeachment inquiry continues much longer, it's going to get Trump reelected in 2020, as are other types of Democratic infighting, potentially, as I've pointed out before. There are three options, and Democrats should figure out, like today, which one it is that they're going to get behind. They need to unite behind it, and they need to carry it out. Anything else is going to be damaging to Democrats in 2020, both for the removal of Donald Trump and also in many of their own races. Option number one, start an impeachment inquiry right now. You don't go directly to impeachment. You've got to first do the inquiry. I would support the decision to start an impeachment inquiry right now. I think there is more than enough evidence to justify the inquiry starting right away. Option two, which I would also support, would be to decide we are going to table this for now and start an impeachment inquiry in 6 months or some number of months in order to be more damaging to Donald Trump's 2020 reelection campaign. It will become a distraction. It will interfere with Donald Trump's campaigning. I would support that. Yes, as I said on Monday, I believe that it is totally reasonable at this point in time, given the politics that have been played by the other side on this issue. I think it would be completely reasonable to say, let's do the impeachment inquiry, but let's wait a little bit and time it so as to be the most damaging to Donald Trump as possible. I would support that as well. Option number three would be to decide today we are not going to pursue an impeachment inquiry. We are going to be done with it and we are going to move on, period. I don't love it in the sense that I think the evidence warrants an impeachment inquiry, and an impeachment inquiry could be damaging to the president in terms of his 2020 reelection chances. But I would be okay, and I would still sort of get behind. I would accept the decision to say we are not going to do anything with an impeachment inquiry, and we're going to focus on the 2020 election. What cannot be an option is to continue infighting for the rest of the 2020 campaign about whether or not to do an impeachment inquiry. That is a loser's game. Democrats, don't be losers. You lose all the time. We continue to lose, even though the American public is as left as it has ever been. Our elected officials continue pulling to the right. Yes, partially because of voter suppression, partially because of gerrymandering, but also because of the self-inflicted damage that Democrats do. There is a lot to gain with an impeachment inquiry, which will push the content of the Mueller report into the mainstream. There is nothing to gain from just arguing about whether or not to do the inquiry. It's been long enough. If you still don't think the inquiry is warranted based on the facts, you're not going to 6 months from now. There's nothing else that will change your mind. Please stop the self-destructive stuff and just decide and agree to stop the public disagreements about it. Mueller has testified. He's almost done with his testimony. You've got to decide on this and move forward one way or the other. Let me know what you think. I'm on Twitter at @dpacman, and the show is on Twitter at David Pakman Show.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Today's new members of the day are Stephanie Holtz and Carla Blake. Stephanie and Carla, thank you so much for being David Pakman Show members. This is the #1 funding source for the show. Direct membership pushes back against YouTube demonetization. It pushes back against deprioritization. It pushes back against the connection between ad dollars and the programming. And I invite you to sign up at www.joinpakman.com. Today's longtime sustaining member of the day is Marcia Harris. Marcia's been with us since 2014, almost 5 years. And I really appreciate that because staying with us for a year is great. Staying with us for 5 years is even better. So join them at www.joinpakman.com. Okay, so we've got to talk today about some tweets that have surfaced from Congresswomen Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, where they appear to also be calling for the deportation of American citizens, something that Donald Trump has been heavily and correctly criticized for over the last 10 days. So let me set this back up for you from the beginning. Donald Trump tweeted back on July 14th, it's been 10 days now since this started, quote, So interesting to see progressive Democrat congresswomen who originally came from countries whose governments are a complete and total catastrophe, the worst, most corrupt and inept anywhere in the world, if they even have a functioning government at all, now loudly and viciously telling the people of the United States, the greatest and most powerful nation on earth, how our government is to be run. Why don't they go back and help fix the totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came, then come back and show us how it is done? These places need your help badly. You can't leave fast enough. I'm sure that Nancy Pelosi would be very happy to quickly work out free travel arrangements. And this was followed by a chant at a Donald Trump rally in North Carolina about a week ago or so, where at the mere mention of Ilhan Omar by Donald Trump, the crowd started chanting, "Send her back, send her back."
And she talked about the evil Israel.
So this is undeniably xenophobic. It's disgusting. It's anti-American. The president of the United States suggesting that not only legal American citizens, but also just legally elected officials who are members of the House of Representatives be sent back or leave and go back to their, quote, original countries. It's absolutely and totally disgusting. It's also counter to the idea that Donald Trump has espoused for years, that if you don't like what's going on in the United States, then you should work to change it. I mean, all of Obama's presidency, Donald Trump's perspective was, I don't like what's happening in the country as a result of Barack Obama. I want it to change. And eventually, I want it to change by running for president. If members of Congress want to change the country for the better as they see it, Trump says they should leave and go back to their, quote, original countries. Donald Trump's entire campaign was based on not leaving and going somewhere else, maybe Germany, where Trump's family came from, but on trying to improve the country that you live in. So anyway, total hypocrisy. Now, we get to this latest revelation, which is that it starts to get a little complicated because at least two members of the so-called squad, these four ethnic minority congresswomen, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib and Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, are on record as appearing to suggest the deportation of people that they don't like. Now, I received probably 50 or 60 emails in the last 12 hours, some from the right saying, David, you are a shill for the left, and you will not cover that Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib have also tweeted about deporting people that are legally here in the United States. I received roughly half of those 50 or 60 emails were from people on the left who said, David, you don't need to cover this because it's a non-story, and the tweets by Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib are completely different than what Donald Trump has said and done. Well, I'm going to cover it, likely to the displeasure of everybody who listens or watches, because it does deserve coverage, but it is also true that these comments from the Congresswomen, the now Congresswomen, which is an important thing to mention, are not the same as what Donald Trump said. So let's look first at Ilhan Omar. Back in October of 2012, a Twitter user posted an article about a Maine mayor, a mayor in the state of Maine, saying that Somalis should leave their culture at the door in the United States. A Twitter battle developed. Ilhan Omar took the position that Somalis don't need to leave their culture at the door, that America is a melting pot. And then eventually Ilhan Omar tweeted, quote, we are citizens and can't be deported. Why don't we deport you to wherever you came from? Now, I have to tell you, this does not seem to me to be Ilhan Omar suggesting that citizens be deported. I see this as Ilhan Omar saying that deporting her as a Somali-born but now American citizen is no more logical than deporting any of the U.S. citizens that are arguing with Ilhan Omar on Twitter about how Somalis should leave their culture at the door. I don't see this as the same as go back to your country, your original country or whatever. I see this more as it's absurd to be telling anyone, me or you, to go back to your country. Now, this is not a defense of Ilhan Omar reflexively, as many of you know and have criticized me for. I don't agree with many of Ilhan Omar's sort of approaches to politics and even some of her political positions. She's very much for the BDS movement, to boycott Israel. I'm against that movement. I've explained why. It's not the topic of today's program. I have no incentive to reflexively defend Ilhan Omar if she doesn't deserve defending. I just don't think this is the same as what Donald Trump said. And more importantly, she was not president of the United States when she tweeted that, nor was she even a member of Congress. So I believe, I forget the date now on that tweet. Then we get to Rashida Tlaib, who back in December of 2015 tweeted about Donald Trump, "Deport this a-hole." Now, this one is not so easily defensible. This is pretty direct and clear. The only real difference is that Rashida Tlaib in 2015 was a member of the Michigan House of Representatives, not a member of Congress and not a president of the United States. Now, I still disagree with what she said, as I disagree with what Donald Trump said. But if Republicans are going to take the position that when Trump said it, it was merely symbolic and meant to say they disagree, that he disagrees with the policies of the squad, if they are going to take the position that when Trump's followers chanted "send her back," it was merely symbolic, a way to say we disagree with the politics of Ilhan Omar, then I don't know how you can't also sort of be forced logically into accepting that when Rashida Tlaib is saying "deport this a-hole," it is the same type of symbolism that is, I disagree with this person's politics and I don't think he's good for the country. I don't like this stuff. I don't like any of it. But the truth is that what Ilhan Omar said is not the same as what Donald Trump said. What Rashida Tlaib said is actually closer to what Donald Trump said. But again, if we are saying that these are symbolic political statements, we have to apply that to Rashida Tlaib's statement as well. Otherwise, we are hypocrites, which I know doesn't matter to the right anymore, but it matters to me. So I talked about it. I don't know how many people will agree with my perspective here, that these are comments worthy of commentary, but there is a distinction between them and what Donald Trump has been saying. I want to hear from you. Make sure if you're watching this clip on YouTube that you are subscribed to our channel. Hit the subscribe button. We are now beyond 702,000 subscribers. If you are listening on the radio or watching on TV or whatever, you can either find this clip on YouTube and comment on it or tweet me at dpacman. I have some stunning video for you today. This is a literal deplatforming. Someone was pushed off of the platform from which they were speaking, a literal platform, a stage. I'm talking about a Father Marcelo Rossi preaching at a retreat in Sao Paulo, Brazil. He is an extremely anti-gay priest, very, very homophobic. A couple of examples. Back in 1998, he said, quote, "A lot of ideas will change the day homosexuality is proven to be an illness." In 2014, he said, quote, "Sex between men causes pain. If something causes pain, it can't be a good thing." Interesting. I wonder if he would apply that to aerobic exercise as well, or if maybe there's a different standard applied there. So in any case, Marcelo Rossi is preaching, and this is an important thing to mention. The initial reports about this were that he was preaching about how fat women don't go to heaven at the moment that a woman ran on stage and pushed him off. We've since learned that that appears not to be the case. I'm going to play the video here for you. You will see a woman run on stage and shove him off. This is the mother of a 3-year-old that was at the retreat, and it appears that this is really a case of someone suffering from mental health issues. Let's take a look.
Não é mais minha, e essas mãos não mais me pertencem. Pecadoras, fracas, mas essas mãos pertencem a Jesus. Tanto que o sacerdote já age na pessoa de Cristo, para servir, para abençoar.
So again, the controversy was that it was initially claimed that the priest was preaching about how fat women can't go to heaven at the time that the woman ran on stage and pushed him off. The implication was it was a direct response to the vile nature of what he was saying. It appears that that was not the case. He was reportedly preaching about how his hands belong to Jesus, which may be just as kooky in the eyes of non-believers as anything else that he might have been saying. But it was not fat women can't go to heaven. And then it seems that this really was more about a mentally ill person, sadly, than anything else. Although this guy is horrifically anti-gay, and any opportunity to point out that there are these they are established, they are almost like codified homophobes. This is a priest with a following and regularly speaking to large audiences about how bad also, anything LGBT related is. it's still an opportunity to mention that this is going on. I have to be very clear that I'm against violence like this. I'm against this priest. I'm against his ideas. I'm also against homophobia. But I don't know that we really achieve much by shoving the guy off the stage. If it was indeed just a mentally ill person who was acting in a way that was dissociated from sort of common sense and rational thinking, then that's what it was. If it was an act against the speech of the priest, I don't believe that this is how those who are in favor of LGBT rights, those who are defenders of all of the things that we on the left defend, I don't think we achieve our goals with this type of action. If you disagree, though, let me know. I know there is a sliver of our audience that has more of a tendency towards using physical violence to try to achieve political goals. And I'm open to hearing from everybody. Make sure you're following me on Instagram at david.pacman. You can also follow The David Pakman Show on Instagram at David Pakman Show.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
It's great to welcome to the program today Sanford Levinson, who is a legal scholar, professor at the University of Texas Law School, and co-author, along with his wife Cynthia, of the book Fault Lines in the Constitution: The Framers, Their Fights, and the Flaws That Affect Us Today. Sanford, so great to talk to you today.
I'm delighted to be here.
So to begin with, for people who maybe aren't familiar with the genesis of the Constitution, what was going on in the United States that prompted the founding fathers to realize that the Articles of Confederation were in some way not working or falling short, and that writing a constitution was something that made sense?
Right. There are three principal things. First of all, the so-called national government, and I use that term advisedly, was incapable of getting any money. What they could do, in effect, was to ask the states to contribute. But by 1786, I think they were contributing something like a total of $636. So that's the first thing, no money. Secondly, there were fears of various military attacks from a variety of European countries, but also from a variety of Indian tribes, many of whom, for very sensible reasons, had supported the British during our secession from the British Empire. And so there was real concern about the ability of this new country to defend itself. The third thing is that there were trade wars, which is something we're familiar with today in an international context, but there was no established notion of free trade among the various states. And there was some genuine hostility between and among a number of the states, so that people like Alexander Hamilton and others described the system under the Articles of Confederation as, quote, imbecilic, unquote, and something had to be done.
When the transition from the Articles of Confederation to the Constitution took place, how much discussion do we know, how much discussion there was about writing the Constitution in such a way to indefinitely account for however society might change? And the reason I ask that is that now there is a big debate over to what degree do we need to be amending the Constitution on an ongoing basis to account for how drastically life has changed today from when it was written. Was there much discussion of accounting for that at the time of its writing?
That's a terrific question. I think that the most accurate answer is no, that the first Constitution, that is the Articles of Confederation, lasted a grand total of 6 years. I think that if you could have interviewed the framers, they would have been thrilled to be told that the 1787 Constitution would last 50 years. I think if you had said, well, you know, you're really writing something that should last forever, I think they would have said, you know, that's crazy, in part because they were extremely aware of what they repeatedly called the lessons of experience and the need to update government in terms of those lessons. Cynthia and I do not engage in founder bashing. We think that the founders, by and large, were admirable people trying to respond to what they thought were the chief challenges of the day, and that they weren't utopians. They were trying to develop a document that could get us through the next several years, where several might mean 25 or 50, but they expected amendment. And quite frankly, I think a lot of them expected new conventions. Article 5, which is the amendment article, explicitly allows for new conventions. And I think that most of the framers would be astonished to be told that there's been no national convention since 1787, whereas there have been over 230 state constitutional conventions since 1787.
So there is the view from some that it is immensely difficult to amend the Constitution. So my question is sort of a two-part question. The first part is, how do you assess the difficulty of amending the Constitution in the context of sort of modern society? And number two, if indeed the founders were so welcoming or expecting of significant amending of the Constitution as the country changed, why did they set the level of difficulty that they set?
Right. Another great question. What they faced in 1787 was an Articles of Confederation that required unanimous consent of the state legislatures of every state. So from their perspective, Article 5, which requires, quote, only, unquote, 3/4 of the states to assent to amendment, was a big improvement. Secondly, Article 5 worked in the first, let's call it 15 or 20 years. We got the Bill of Rights in 1791. 12 amendments were sent out. 10 of them were ratified. We call them today the Bill of Rights. In 1800 or 1801, the problems, to put it mildly, of the way we selected presidents was revealed in the tie between Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr. And we got the 12th Amendment, which changed things for the better, though not enough as far as I'm concerned. And I'm skipping the 11th Amendment, which is much more esoteric. But in 1793, the Supreme Court issued a very controversial decision about states' rights, and it was reversed. So if you look at our early history, you could say, well, 3/4 is a lot, but the system is more or less working. In the modern world, 3/4 of 50, where you have the distribution that you now have of small states, and indeed very small states, and not only large states, but very large states, and a far, far more polarized country than even was the case in 1787, it has become functionally close to impossible to amend the Constitution. So, political scientists have looked at this, and some have said that the United States national Constitution is the most difficult to amend Constitution in the world. And one of the things we talk about in our book, and frankly, I think one of the things that is especially valuable about our book, is that we look not only at the U.S. Constitution, but also at the fact that every state has its own constitution. There are 51 constitutions in the United States. And if you look at the state constitutions, they are all easier to amend than the national Constitution. So it's not the case that the American people are reluctant to amend their constitutions. In fact, the typical state has had close to 3 different constitutions over their histories. Rather, we have a peculiar religious-like veneration of the national Constitution that makes it almost unthinkable to talk about amending it. But even if you do think of amending, you then come up against the concrete reality that it's extraordinarily difficult to get 2/3 of each House of Congress. And then even if you get it, it's even more difficult to get 3/4 of the states.
So one of the areas that is of a lot of interest right now because of the current administration is the census and how should it be carried out? What is really the underlying purpose of the census? From a sort of constitutional historian perspective, what was the point of establishing the census to begin with?
Yeah, census is an extraordinarily interesting part of the Constitution because you can make an argument that it's really one of the very, very few things Congress must make sure is done. The other is actually setting up a Supreme Court of the United States. But, for example, setting up circuit courts or district courts, that's optional with Congress. It's optional for Congress to declare war or not to declare wars, et cetera, et cetera. But the Constitution requires that a census be held every 10 years. And the reason is deceptively simple. It's the House of Representatives, that the House is allocated more or less proportionately, unlike the U.S. Senate. And so if you're going to have a major branch of Congress where representation is a function of the population of the states, you have to know the population of the states. It's really as simple as that. And it's every 10 years because the framers were smart enough to realize that the United States was a dynamic country. There would be lots of settlement. There would be people moving around. So you couldn't necessarily depend that the population of Virginia in 1790 relative to the population of Tennessee would be the same in 1800 or 1820, et cetera, et cetera. So the Constitution requires every 10 years without exception.
Interestingly, in my reading, although it requires it, it's not clear what the penalty would be and to whom it would be assessed if the census does not happen as scheduled. Is my reading correct of that?
Well, it's one of those things. John Marshall referred to the Constitution as a great outline. And so there are things that are specified. One of them is you got to have a census. But again, the question you ask is a very shrewd one. What if the president says, I don't think so? Mm-hmm. Then what do? Do you charge the president with violating the law? Well, actually, this morning is being spent on the Mueller hearings and hearing Robert Mueller saying over and over again, the Justice Department says you can't indict a sitting president. So could you impeach a president for refusing to take care to enforce one of the most basic obligations of the national government, which is to conduct a census? I think the answer is yes. But I think it would require a sense of national outrage led by Congress that the president is being derelict with regard to one of his most fundamental responsibilities, which is to make sure that the House of Representatives is fairly apportioned.
Yes, and in today's hyper-partisan climate, it's hard for me to imagine that there would be that level of unitedness around that particular issue, but it remains to be seen.
Right. I think you're right.
We've been speaking with Sanford Levinson, who's a legal scholar, professor at the University of Texas Law School. The book co-authored with his wife, Cynthia, is Fault Lines in the Constitution, the framers, their fights, and the flaws that affect us today. Sanford, really a pleasure having you on today.
My pleasure.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Okay, I think folks are going to like this follow-up on the Gavin McInnes situation. So Gavin McInnes is he is one of the founders of Vice. He hasn't been involved with Vice for a very long time. He was one of the co-founders of the Proud Boys, although I am told he has since distanced himself from that extremist group. And in any case, the newest thing he's doing is he has a new show. And I was invited onto that program. I told you last week how I was offered a whole bunch of money to be on that program. Others have reported, including Sam Seder, being offered $5,000 to appear on Gavin McInnes' program, which is a paywalled program, meaning you only can see the content if you become a paid subscriber. My manager actually did some negotiation with the Gavin McInnes team, which may have been actually just Gavin McInnes communicating with my manager under a different name, and was able to actually negotiate a pretty substantial rate. And in the midst of this negotiation that was going on, I received a phone call from a guy named Jim telling me that I should appear on Gavin McInnes' show, who we later determined with like 99.9% certainty was actually Gavin McInnes himself. Here's a reminder about that. Okay, let's go next to our caller from the 253 area code. Who's calling today from 253?
Hey, David, it's Jim, and I just wanted to say, long-time listener, first-time caller, love you. And I just wanted to talk about the Green New Deal and just see what ideas you had about maybe getting that pushed through. And also, a guy I despise came up on my YouTube the other day on a commercial, Gavin McInnes, on this new show, Free Speech. And I was trying to click out of it right away. And then all of a sudden I saw Dr. Cornel West and Mark Lamont Hill on the show.
Yeah.
And I actually checked it out, and it's a cool show in regards to just liberals nailing Gavin, and it was so awesome to watch, especially Mark Lamont Hill. I canceled my subscription because I saw all the shows, but I just thought it'd be awesome if you could get on his show and destroy him for us.
So hold on,
please.
you canceled your subscription to what?
Oh, I signed up just to watch the Dr. Lamont Hill
I see.
and Cornel West show on the Free Speech.
So then Sam Seder from the Majority Report later did a segment explaining that he also had been invited to appear on Gavin McInnes' program. He also talked about this call I received from, quote, Jim, who appears to really have been Gavin himself. Anna Kasparian from the Young Turks was also invited. She did a segment about it in the last day or two and covered that, as well as Sam and I being invited onto the program to appear with Gavin McInnes. And now, hilariously, Gavin himself has done an entire episode attacking us because despite the offer of money, we have, at least so far, refused to appear on his program, which is hilarious because if we get invited with no money being on the table and we refuse to appear, we are not willing to engage with the other side or whatever. If we are offered money and appear, then it's, well, we're only appearing because we were given money, not because we actually want to engage with the other side. If we turn down the appearance, despite the offer of thousands and thousands of dollars to appear, then all of a sudden the problem is that we are just not willing to engage with the other side, even though you would think that it would be a sign of the fact that we are not going to be tainted or influenced by the money alone. We are going to actually make decisions about what appearances do and don't make sense. So check this out. This is a tweeted screenshot promoting this event where Gavin says, this entire episode is dedicated to Anna Kasparian, Sam Seder, and David Pakman, who appear to be outraged that Gavin offered them money to debate a conservative. Why is it so hard to get liberal guests? Why do they consistently refuse to compete in the marketplace of ideas? And people actually wrote to me and they said, David, you really should address this. Like, why not just appear and compete in the marketplace of ideas with Gavin? What's important for you to understand is that the pitch was not debate Gavin McInnes about this topic or that topic or the corrosive nature of his influence on the political discourse. The invitation was show up and have Gavin McInnes play talk show host and moderate a discussion between David Pakman and some conservative. Sam Seder and some conservative, Anna Kasparian and some conservative. And the problem I have with this, and I've talked to Sam about this as well, is that I feel as though I'm contributing to the whitewashing of Gavin McInnes in a way that I was not immediately comfortable with. And to be clear, I have not actually turned this down. The reality is I can't go to New York City and do this until the fall anyway. I'm traveling every single week between now and Labor Day, and we have the David Pakman Show summer vacation coming up, for which I'll be out of the country. So we basically just tabled it. He, I guess, interpreted it as I'm turning down the appearance. I'm open in principle to appearing on Gavin McInnes's program. But what I feel is the real problem here is that, number one, again, by allowing him to play talk show host and moderate a discussion between another conservative and me, I'm sort of whitewashing McInnes. And again, these are videos that would be paywalled just for his paid audience. The last thing I want to do is give this guy paid subscribers by allowing him to promote an appearance that I did with someone else that contributes to the whitewashing of Gavin McInnes and may actually get people to sign up and pay for his program. Now, I'm curious. I haven't, again, because the show is paywalled, I have no idea what was actually said during this episode. I'm curious whether he addresses the fact that he called into my show pretending to be a guy named Jim, suggesting that I should really, as a leftist, go and appear on Gavin McInnes's program. I don't know if somebody has a subscription to his program. Maybe they can tell me if that comes up. My guess is it does not come up. Okay, we've been talking for years about how we might be able to, in some way, expand the offerings of the David Pakman Show to appeal also to reach more people who don't speak English or maybe don't speak English well enough to really watch like political discussion shows like this one. What might we be able to do? The sort of obvious idea in terms of another language would be Spanish. I'm from Argentina. My first language is Spanish. I learned English as a second language when I moved here. And Spanish would be the sort of natural way to go in my mind. Number one, because it's the only other language I speak fluently. And also because it seems like it would be a good target population in the United States, given that we mostly deal with American politics because of the increased importance of the Spanish-speaking voter in influencing elections in the United States. Now, from a practical standpoint, we're pretty busy just doing the show in English that we do and the bonus show for members in English that we do and live streams in English that I do. So the idea of me doing an entire additional show in Spanish seems to sort of stretch the limits of what is possible, given that the day is 24 hours long and I also need some time to sleep. But I was contacted by two graduate students who developed a system that can take our captions. We now caption all of our content on YouTube in English, obviously. They've developed a system that can take those captions, dub them into other languages, including Spanish, and then sync them to the original videos that we are doing. Now, it's not perfect, but it's very interesting. Here's a clip, just 45 seconds from one of the stories I did on Monday, where the captions were taken, turned into a Spanish narration, and then placed over the video from that day. Take a look.
Fue un fin de semana realmente loco, fuera de la Casa Blanca. Donald Trump sufrió una fusión extraña y extraña por una historia del Washington Post sobre tweets y les hizo enviar tweets aún más locos. Así que el sábado, The Washington Post escribió sobre los tweets racistas de Donald Trump el domingo, casi como un día más tarde. Trump pasó su mañana perdiendo la cabeza por el Washington publicar historia. Y uno de los temas de ese artículo del Washington Post, que se obtuvo ampliamente a pesar de los tweets que estás a punto de ver, el Washington Post hizo un muy buen trabajo. La Casa Blanca ayuda a asesores, legisladores y otros que participaron en el manejo de Trump en respuesta al agujero, vuelva al fiasco de su país original. Básicamente compartió la misma perspectiva con el Washington Post.
Okay, so anybody who speaks Spanish will realize it is not perfect. But we started the David Pakman Show in English to reach as many people as possible and to try to influence politics and policy to the extent that we are able in a way that we think is for the betterment of the country. What we could do is start a second YouTube channel, The David Pakman Show Spanish, on a daily basis. All of the content we do on the regular David Pakman Show channel in English could be dubbed and put on the David Pakman Show Spanish channel. It would be the same stories. It would be the same content dubbed to Spanish. The downsides are it's not perfect. Like I said, obviously it would be better for me to just do the entire show again in Spanish, but it's just not possible. It's not practical. Another downside is we'd be starting from scratch with an audience. Most of our current audience is an English-speaking audience. And even though Spanish is a language that is often taken by people in high school, college, whatever, the majority of our audience is not going to switch over or be interested in the David Pakman Show in Spanish. So we're sort of like starting from scratch, trying to build a new audience. The other downside is this is not free, right? There's a cost to getting the dubbed videos, to managing an additional YouTube channel. The upsides are similar or related to the downsides. It is a completely new market. On the one hand, we're starting from scratch, trying to build an audience in Spanish, but it is a completely new market. I believe it's a valuable service to people who live in the United States but don't speak English well enough to consume political content in English. They could become engaged. The other upside is I don't know of any other American progressive media show that is doing something like this. And sometimes being the first to do something can be a really great advantage and provide something that is extraordinarily valuable. So we could get this going relatively quickly if we decide to. I want to hear from you. What do you think about this? Is it good enough to warrant doing? Should we be waiting for some better technology? Should we just look at translating the captions to Spanish? Seems less engaging for sure. This would be a channel with Spanish language titles, Spanish descriptions. It would all be in Spanish. So I think it's interesting. I want to hear from you. Contact me by email. This is the best way now. When I really want to hear serious commentary from the audience, use the contact form at davidpakman.com to get in touch and tell me what you think about this idea. We have a voicemail number. That number is 219-2DavidP. We did reach 700,000 YouTube subscribers yesterday, and today's voicemail is about that.
Hey, David, Rayman here. Congratulations on getting to 700,000 subscribers.
Thank you.
Curious if the goal is 1 million, what are you going to do to entice more subscribers? Are you going to do some more shows with no product in your hair? Are you going to do some Jenga games? I don't know. Those are fun.
Yeah, listen, I mean, my thought is I don't know that we should be drastically changing what we're doing in order to get to 1 million subscribers. That's an amazing goal. Based on the recent subscriber trends, we are sort of on target to hit 1 million YouTube subscribers in June of 2020, in great time for the 2020 election. It would be amazing to be covering the 2020 election as a YouTube channel with over 1 million subscribers. But to be honest, the growth curve has been accelerating. It only took us 4 months to get our last 100,000 subscribers. It took 7 months to get the prior 100,000. So it's accelerating, and I don't know that I'm inclined to change much of anything. We're going to just keep doing our thing. And part of that is doing not only a really good broadcast show every day, but a really good bonus show every day. On today's, we will talk about Donald Trump's latest unhinged Afghanistan comments, as well as 2 men who have been bizarrely fined for eating raw squirrels to protest veganism. A very, very strange way to protest. All of those stories and more on today's bonus show.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.